Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your cattle market summary for the week ending April the 27th, where this market is unafraid, just in the face of all these supplies that we think are coming down the pike, and been talking about it for months, literally. And it just seems like we just keep pushing that wall of cattle back further and further, and we're either going to go under, around, over, or through it. We've got several holes knocked in this wall already. There's been a lot of cattle that normally would stay in the 5-area feeding region, that would normally slaughter in that region too, that have been leaving the 5 areas and going out west to fill some shortcomings out there in some of those western plants that are pretty sizable and kill slaughter steers and heifers. That's taken some cattle out of the game. We've had a lot of kind of severe storms this spring that has really whacked the weight on those cattle, sapped it out of them, set them back a little bit. So that's kind of put a hole in the wall, and it's going to chop it up a little bit instead of all of them coming at the same time. Our meat sales have been excellent the last 3 or 4 weeks, and these packers are hungry. They've sold a lot of cattle out front. They know that they've got those sales to cover, and then they want to keep some product to sell on the spot market also. And it just seems like we're going to get through this wall. Yes, there are going to be heavier supplies of market-ready cattle. Yes, a lot of the feedlots have sold cattle the last 3 or 4 weeks for May delivery. So the packers are going to have a lot of their needs covered, so it's going to be tough. But in the last couple of weeks, we've had some real aggressive marketing of the tight supplies of market-ready cattle that we have, and I think your feedlot guys, the few that sell on the open market, and hopefully a lot of the guys at Formula 2 have been digging in and getting some greener cattle and kind of preparing themselves for what's about to happen. But we've had a real interesting week. It all started off with the response of that neutral cattle on feed report, which really was a good deal that it was neutral. You're usually looking for a friendly report. It was really actually friendly. It was just on the friendly side of neutral in all 3 categories. But the great thing was the placement figure hit the lofty prediction that your analysts had put out there at just 91%, and that was good. But you had Joplin on Monday having the biggest string of on-site auction cattle that we've really remember any time or may not ever see again, but sold 895 head of steers that weighed 883 pounds, just common commodity cattle, nothing fancy about them, at $1.30. And we may not see a draft that size for a long time, if ever, and you just don't see a big string of cattle that can all sell together coming through an auction market very often. But it's good to see. Another thing that we saw, and we don't normally think, a lot of us don't, of France being a big champion of agriculture, but this past week France was the first one to outlaw your fake meat, using a name that is normally associated with animal protein, even as much as steak or sausage or even filet. Any of those names that normally are associated with real animal protein, they're not going to let the fake meat use any of those names to market their product. And I wish it was the United States the first to do that, but hopefully they will follow suit and we can get something going like that in this kind of a reality world that we're living in now, where everybody doesn't want to hurt anyone's feelings and everybody is getting so tender about things anymore. But let's look at the board for last week. June live cattle started out on Monday up $1.15. Tuesday was up just 17 cents. Wednesday up 52 cents. Thursday down $1.22. And Friday finally charged up there, up $2.65, with June finally starting to show that it's going to respond, that we've gotten this far towards those the so-called wall of cattle, and still the market's charging. And so finally on Friday it decided it better start making its way towards your cash market, because it doesn't appear that your packers are going to be able to break it. The record gap that we saw on Thursday's close of $18.17 between your first two traded months on your live cattle contract, and it's good that we're seeing the June finally start to come up again. But it ended the week at 107 even. Your April, and that was $3.28 higher for the week. Your April gained the most ground at $5.10. Of course, it's matured now, and it had no choice but get up there where cattle were trading. But ended the week at 124.45. Your August ended the week at 105.97, up $2.17. But you know, that April come all the way up just in the last few weeks. You think back 3 weeks ago, your April spot live cattle contract was clinging to $1.12. And just in the last 3 weeks, it's charged all the way up there to almost 124.5, because it basically had to when you're sitting at the end of April and you've got fat selling 124 to 126, so it had to jump up there, and it was a great thing to see. May feeder cattle, Monday started out up $1.27, Tuesday was down 45 cents, Wednesday up $1.20, Thursday down $1.05, and Friday charged up there with help from your live cattle up 172, with May feeder cattle contract ending the week at 142.02, up $2.70. Your April went off the board at 139.99 with some help of some really chargy sales late in the week on some eye-opening prices there being paid on the cash market. 139.99 on your April as it went off the board, and that was up $2.69 for the week. August sitting up there at 148.25. That's where we're headed, guys. Of course, we've been selling 8-weight cattle that high all week here last week, but 148.25, up $3.75 for the week. Your fat cattle trade was very interesting through the week. It just seemed very lax, and nobody thought that that we were on the edge of gaining a whole lot more ground. We were kind of thinking steady through there, and your packers didn't seem like they were in any big hurry to do anything. Through Thursday, they had only sold 19,600 head from a big range from 118 to 125 live, and your weighted average was sitting just under 121. About the only significant trade that we'd seen up through Thursday was a pretty good string of cattle that sold at 121, and that was for May delivery. Your dress sales were about the same, 190 to 195, with a weighted average of 193.93. And we got all the way to Friday, and everybody's thinking, are we going to sell? Are we going to have a spot market here on the cash, or what's going on? And then Friday, early afternoon, it really cranked up, and in your southern plains of Texas and Kansas started selling a lot of cattle at 124, $2 to $3 higher. Your packers really showed how aggressive that they wanted to be, and then they're making money, and they've got a lot of orders to fill, and they've got to turn up this chain speeds and keep them up there, and they need some cattle. And so jumped up there. Northern Plains sales were 125 to 126. That was fully $2 higher. And your dress sales started out, like I said, kind of slow there, when the 195, and then went mostly 199 in eastern Nebraska, and that would be $4 higher. So just a very impressive late week. Friday fat cattle trade, and we just don't know how much longer we can go with keeping this going, but it's very interesting to watch this market just continue to gain ground right as it gets right up against this so-called wall of cattle we got coming. But box beef cutout values, your average trade for the week last week on choice cuts, $218.64. That was up $6.86 compared to the weighted average of the previous week. Your select cuts, $203.16 on the average trade of last week. That was up $3.81. And typical, starting to get into grilling time, your choice select spread growing up there almost $15.50. And a fairly impressive movement too, not quite as much as the previous week, but still 632 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings there. Your slaughter, fairly aggressive, but had a disappointing Saturday, and you think maybe your packers just didn't know what they were going to get done for last week, and it got into Friday, and they were needing to schedule things for Saturday, and they just kind of cut back. And Saturday's slaughter of only 38,000 is what kind of made it a disappointing week, although still fairly aggressive at 623,000. That was down just 1,000 from the previous week and down 7 from the same week a year ago. Look at your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on Beef Market Central based on the 800-pound steer ended the week at 138.65, and that was $2.23 higher than it ended the previous week, and that goes right along with your cash feeder cattle trend in your auctions, which was fully steady to $5 higher and had a lot of spots sharply higher. I know a lot of times we have some stick out sales, but this past week we probably saw more stick out sales than we've seen for a long time, and all had to do with the condition of the cattle. If they happen to run across a set of cattle weighing in the 6s that was just right to turn out on grass, had some condition to them, a good weigh up, and hard cattle that they could turn right out and didn't have to worry about their health on them or anything. A set of cattle like that, some true stocker cattle, could really blow through the roof. And then also the same on your big yearling feeder cattle too. If you saw any green yearling feeder cattle that hadn't been overly backgrounded, then you could also see those prices take off too, because this time of year without any wheat left or anything, where's anybody going to find any green yearlings? But look at a couple individual quotes on Friday to end the week. Way out west at Shasta Livestock Yard, where I always say Merle Haggard would have sold his cattle if he'd have had them. Cottonwood, California. The Peak family, got to be friends with them. Ellington, Brad Peak, and their whole bunch out there. Really nice people. If you don't know them, you need to get to know them if you have the opportunity. But had a really good sale there on Friday. Way out there in Cottonwood, California, 87 head of 533-pound steers, bring $1.90, and then a good test of the market on Friday, and not a place that you see a lot of farmer feeder demand, just straight up just good feedlot demand setting in eastern Kansas. Fort Scott, Kansas, get this, on Friday, 60 head of 861-pound steers bring $137.75. That's a look at your markets from last week from a home DV auction office here in Canyon, Texas. We'll talk to you next week.